Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh yeah! Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. And a 19.
Beat Rob, Jim, Packard, J. King.
Still Poddable, Still Poddable.
The Caesar on the court to get another ring.
Still Poddable, Still Poddable.
Everybody in the chat now sing.
Still Poddable, Still Poddable, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. The Boston Celtics, Still Poddable, Still Poddable. Oh yeah! Shut your ass up,
Your daddy's always happy here.
Welcome back to Still Poddable, the best Celtics podcast here on the interwebs. Some people might call it Al Gore's internet, not Scally Cap J. King over there from The Athletic, but I call it
Joseph Pulitzer's internet.
What's his connection to the internet?
He wrote newspapers, which became the internet later on in some form.
Are you saying this because you look like a newspaper boy circa 1910?
Yes.
All right.
Yes,
absolutely.
entirely.
This is Still Poddable. I'm Sam Jam Packard. This is the free version of the show, but we're here for you every single day, Monday through Friday. Patreon.com/StillPoddable. Sign up today. Get in now as the Celtics prepare for a playoff run and join one of the most exciting chats. Just a fun place, fun community to watch Celtics basketball and talk about the games. This is the free episode, so we're on the CLNS YouTube page, and we are brought to you by the fine folks at PrizePicks. And Jay, our long national nightmare is over. That's right. Kristaps Porzingis returned to play basketball after a mystery illness kept him out for, 8 games? An extended
8 games.
period. And he looked pretty damn good.
And 9 out of 10. Don't forget 9 out of 10.
He missed 9 out of 10 with a mystery illness?
Yeah, because the other one was one when he was a late scratch.
Oh, yeah.
And got scratched just before tip-off, and then played the next game against Detroit. Said afterward, basically, that he was garbage in that game, and then didn't play for weeks.
So we can talk about, I guess, the sickness, or talk about his return to the court. I mean, what was your takeaway from
Have you
his?
ever had bronchitis?
I have not. What's it like? Have you ever?
I've never had it
bronchitis?
either. I've never had it. Sounds like it sucks based on the way he was describing it. He said his crash that he worked out to try to get ready for the Lakers game, which was last weekend.
Which he said he was playing with on Instagram.
Yes. And then he said the crash was historic after he worked out. So basically he worked out and couldn't get up out of bed to make himself coffee in the morning, is what he said. That's a tough crash. That's
some serious
from
bronchitis.
a single workout. Yeah, that bronchitis was no joke.
For chronic bronchitis, the Mayo Clinic tells us symptoms include cough, production of mucus, fatigue, chest discomfort, and shortness of breath. And I would say if you're going to play NBA level basketball, fatigue, chest discomfort, and shortness of breath may stunt your ability to put the biscuit in the basket. So understandable if he was out for that long.
And he's still not even 100% sure he had bronchitis. It just seems like it might be something he had. They tested him for mononucleosis. They tested him for other stuff. Everything came back negative, and they just said, yeah, looks like bronchitis to me.
Now, mono is that's the Kissing's disease. I got that as a freshman in college, so watch out, ladies.
Hey, congrats.
Thanks. It was pretty cool. Well, let's focus on the on-court action. Like, what did we see in his return against the Nets? Obviously, it's been a part of their offense just in terms of they haven't really had a guy to punish switches and like really mismatch. Like, teams have been able to go smaller against the Celtics. I'm thinking specifically the Lakers. Obviously, the Lakers didn't win that game, but like other teams have been able to run out small lineups, and the Celtics haven't had that kind of part of their versatility to really punish someone in the post. And so I thought that was my biggest reaction. It was just like, it's just nice to see Kristaps hit that foul line jumper over that smaller defender, because that hadn't been an option for the Celtics in some weeks now.
Yeah, and he shot like shit from behind the arc. He missed, I believe, 6 of his 7 3-point attempts. he had 24 points, and almost all of it was from right at the rim. He had dunks. He dunked on Day'Ron Sharp. He had the short little jumper over the top of D'Angelo Russell. He was drawing free throws. He was just being a problem. And the Nets threw a lot of attention at Jason Tatum. They doubled him. They tripled him sometimes. And Kristaps, it was like he rolled a lot of the game and just was in the interior getting points in the paint. And that to me is the biggest difference. When they don't have him, they have Al Horford who can shoot threes. But Kristaps, he can space you or he can roll. And when he rolls, he gives them a dynamic that nobody else does because he can post, he can destroy switches. He's just a gifted offensive player. And to come back after, 8 games off and be dealing with such a serious illness from the way he described it, and then to just come back with 24 points. It seems like every time he comes back from an injury, he's ready like he never left. That said, like the last month or so of the regular season, not quite a month now, Celtics, they need to get that starting lineup sometime. I know we've seen the starting lineup be great. I know they won a championship with that starting lineup. I know all of it. But they're getting outscored this season with their starting lineup on the court. Minus 1.6 points per 100 possessions with that starting lineup. So to me, it's really important. Obviously, you have to rest guys. You have to get fresh for the playoffs. You have to prioritize all that. But you also have to get some time with everybody on the court and make sure that you iron out whatever problems there are with that group and make sure that it's humming and confident and ready to go for the playoffs. Because obviously double bigs are working. Al Horford with the starting lineup has worked to a great extent, but you need to be comfortable going back to old reliable, that normal starting lineup.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that makes the Celtics so dangerous is their versatility. And obviously double bigs is an option. Double bigs is what they kind of leaned on this year, but you want to be able to, in the playoffs, run out that 5-man rotation and feel comfortable with it. I think that was my next question is like Kristaps missed the Cavs game and he missed the Thunder game. Obviously, those are the two kind of teams you see on the horizon for the Celtics. How much do you think his presence, I guess, changes that matchup? We talked about the Thunder game, me and Trill, and then you, B-Rob, talked about it, just like the small mistakes and the smaller margin for error you had against the Thunder. But the Thunder game, the Celtics shot, 63s? And, like, obviously they didn't make a lot of them in the second half, but they didn't really have an inside presence. And I think that's a lot because they didn't have a Kristaps kind of type option. How much do you think, and this is also in the context of they basically won a finals last year without Kristaps, and it just feels like with the Cavs, with the Thunder, with just like the general tougher potential road in the playoffs now, they're going to need him to be out there and be effective if they're going to expect to go back-to-back.
It's hard to say they won a finals without Kristaps. When
they got
game
to
one, he was absolutely dominant and started that whole series in the Celtics direction. He came in to that game one after a long layoff and just absolutely dominated both ends of the court for a long stretch of that first half. And that's huge. I don't know. I don't think the Celtics would have lost that series. I think they were a vastly superior team to the Mavericks. But the way that he started that series was like that was decisive right there. And so it's hard for me to say they won it without him because that was a huge contribution in and of itself. I
just went to Google Kristaps Porzingis because I wanted to see what his box score was in game one. And the first suggested thing is Kristaps Porzingis meet. So that's a fun little thing.
You've done well. I feel like you're leading the
earned with meat. Yeah, that was how NBC Sports Boston graphic. I mean, you can't say you're going to earn with meat and not expect people to talk about it. That being said, how important do you think he is? I just feels like he's more important. Even if you think how important was the game one, they got to the finals without him. And I just don't think that's necessarily in the cards for them this year. It just feels like they need his presence just because I feel like the East has gotten better. I still think they could beat pretty much everyone besides the Cavs, but I do think he would be important in a Cavs series.
Yeah, I think he's important against the best teams, and especially the teams that can switch everything and have capable defenders everywhere. Like, there's no such thing as a small, capable defender who can guard Kristaps Porzingis. It just doesn't exist. He pulverizes smaller defenders. It doesn't matter who you are. He just shoots over the top of you. He gets good position. He gets to his spot, and he's a master at that. He's been one of the most efficient post-up players for years now. And for the Celtics, like, he doesn't really post up opposing centers. He doesn't really post up guys his own size. He's just picking on little dudes time after time. And like that Oklahoma City game, I actually liked the offensive process from the Celtics in that game. I know they shot a ton of threes. They got good ones. Even in the second half when they went like 5 for 27 or whatever it was, that was actually a pretty good process game. But where you miss Kristaps in that is that when you start missing and the other team is pulling away from you and they're giving up threes, like, that's what you're getting. Like, you just kind of submit to it, right? With Kristaps, you don't have to submit to that. You're going to say, you know what, we're going to find the big guy down low. We're going to get him. He's either going to get a bucket. He's going to draw a foul. He's going to slow the game down a little bit. He's going to pick up fouls on the other side. Like, there are so many things that come out of a Kristaps post-up that are super productive. And especially when the Celtics threes start missing, like, it just gives them another way to play, gives them more outs than just relying on that three-point shot. And I think against the cream of the crop, like, we didn't really see it in the playoffs last year because they didn't really need it. But against the best of the best defenses, I still think his ability to just make quick work of 6'7" and under, anybody 6'7" and under, 6'8" and under, whatever, is such a tool. And it's something that they're going to rely on once the playoffs hit. And I just think, especially now that the competition will be better with Cleveland, with Oklahoma City, with whoever else, like, he's going to be more important than he was last year. They're going to need Kristaps Porzingis, if not for just a few huge games, like, for a consistent dose of post-ups, for a consistent dose of interior scoring, and the rim protection too. Like, they just protect the rim at a different level when he's out there, and they have so many different ways they can play in the front court when he's out there, especially when Al Horford is available, which he wasn't against Brooklyn.
You know, there's nothing quite like attending a game at the TD Garden, watching the Celtics during this run to repeat again. I'll tell you what, going to like the atmosphere at the Celtics-Lakers game a couple weeks ago was probably the best regular season atmosphere I've been at in my 15 years of covering the team. So if you want to check out a game like that, head over to the GameTime app. There are still some good tickets available in the end of the regular season here. You can actually go. I'm looking forward to seeing Marcus Smart come back to town with the Wizards one more time in April. You can check out that type of deal on GameTime, and you can also look for great deals using GameTime Picks, where it shows you the best value on tickets in real time. You can get last-minute deals on tickets right at the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. So whether you want to get that, exclusive flash deals, sponsor deals on tickets for Celtics games, Red Sox opening day, you name it, check out the GameTime app. All-in pricing shows you the total cost up front, no surprise fees at checkout. You can get seat views from any single seat you get, so you know what you're getting in the app before you buy. And the lowest price guarantee on GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime Picks. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create the account and redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time.
And I think, like, just thinking about how well Jason Tatum plays against a big, just like forcing other teams with a smaller guard or even someone, a wing who's trying to defend Jason Tatum, and putting that in just whatever and bringing that big up. this is the decision making that team has to make, like process of like, what do we do with, do we give Jason Tatum a little space? Do we put 2 to Tatum? Do we leave Porzingis to Pop? What if Porzingis rolls? It just makes all of the decision making and all the strategery just that much more pressure on an opposing defense. And yeah, we didn't even bring up Porzingis rim protection, like being able to put him on a non-shooter and just kind of have that roaming potential. I think it would be huge against the Cavs, who I guess have improved and were able to kind of, you guys might not be the DeAndre Hunter believers I am, but they did improve the kind of more able to have more shooting on the floor. Tyler asked me this the other day, in a potential finals matchup, and we'll go to you, new voice on the pod, Brian Robb from MassLive.com. Who do you think?
With a new haircut. Fresh haircut, looking good, feeling good, playing good. B-Rob, who do you think Kristaps guards in a potential Thunder matchup? Like, who's the shooter they kind of, or non-shooter they try to put him on?
I mean, in theory, Dort used to be the non-shooter, but now he's up to what, like 39-40% this year,
and he launches too.
Right,
he
gets him up.
He's not low volume anymore either.
Exactly. So. Yeah, based on that, I think you like. I guess I honestly still start him there because I'm like, I want to make Dort, like, if he can prove it, then you take him off it quickly. But that's the guy in that starting 5 that you want to be getting up 10-15 a game, because I think in the long run, in a long series, that could be a winning proposition for the Celtics defense, and in terms of hiding him. But yeah, I mean, you have to try him on Chet to some degree too, just to see how that works. But like the Chet that we saw on Wednesday night, that's a scary matchup for Porzingis in terms of he gets him up, he's high volume up there, and then can clearly is heavily involved in the picks in the pick and pop.
Chet's sort of like Kristaps from 3, where like you trust it and you believe in it as an opponent more than necessarily the numbers suggest you should.
Right.
Like he's a back-braiding 34%er.
He's at 35% this year. He's at 36.6% for his career. He only shoots 3.7 per game, so it's not like he's getting up a ton. But at the same time, you're like, I don't really want to leave that guy. It's not like last year when they had Josh Giddey, and even though he actually killed the Celtics in one game when they left him wide open, it's not like you have that one guy you can target and say, unless it's Alex Caruso. And even his numbers have shot way up lately after an abysmal start to the season. So it's going to be tough to find that hiding spot, but they usually do it. They're able to do it by, like, doesn't matter really what percentage you shoot, as long as you don't shoot too many of them. Also in a playoff series, like, all it takes is one guy who's not super confident in his shot to miss a few, and then like everything goes awry. And then you're forcing the ball out of Shea's hands because he's throwing it to the guy, and that one guy is missing jumpers. And we're talking about a final series that may not happen, and it's a long way away from happening if it does.
I mean, at this point last year, I think we were talking a lot about the inevitable matchup against the Denver Nuggets.
Probably.
That was the team that the Celtics could not beat last year. And I don't know if they would have beat them in the finals, but like we can't play that game. So let's talk about the
Timberwolves beat them, to be fair. That team ran out of gas and was not, I don't think, going to be a threat.
The Timberwolves, or you mean the last year's Nuggets?
Last year's Nuggets, yeah. Like, if you're going to lose to Karl Towns and Rudy Gobert and those guys, like you were not going to beat last year's Celtics.
I know, but for some reason they can't beat the Timberwolves this year. Like the Timberwolves just have their number. It's a weird situation, but that's neither here nor there. This is not a Denver Nuggets podcast. This is a Boston Celtics podcast. And Jay, I think Kristaps' return on Saturday night was definitely interesting. But Jrue Holiday's performance Friday night in Miami was like, it was the most amount of points he scored as a member of the Celtics. And he explained that he takes some drugs, and that's how he's making that mallet finger feel good. Jay, can you report on what drugs he was possibly taking to result in that performance Friday night against the Heat?
And check your mic, Jay, too.
Probably check that. Some sort of pain thing. My mic is selected, I believe, as it should be.
I think we're just hearing whatever Grady's watching on TV.
How about
There
now?
it is.
boys?
Now
Oh,
we're
now
that's the
it's
smooth
way
social
better.
tones of Jay. There we go.
Packard,
That's what we
thanks,
want.
thanks for letting me know about that 18 minutes ago, 19 minutes ago when we started this podcast. I blame you.
I know I blamed myself too, but I thought that was just kind of like what you were giving me in terms of background noise. I thought that was just the scenario you sat down in.
That's just no. We aim for professionalism here, at least on this side of the podcast.
Let's get back to drugs, though. Let's get to Drew's.
Back to drugs.
That's
Speaking
not
of
a-
professionalism.
Speaking of professionalism, let's talk about what
That's
Drew's
not
I
a
would-
statement I expected to hear from B-Rob.
I would guess it's some pain drug, clearly, but I mean, for the it's not about the finger to me. It's just, is Jrue Holiday still at the level he was last season, or still close enough to the level he was last season that he can be a big force for the Celtics in the playoffs? It's easy to forget how great he was against the Pacers, how great he was against the Mavericks, how he gave the Celtics answers, whether it was in the dunker spot. They used him as a pick and roll guy in the finals. They had him, he would like attack, sometimes Donovan Mitchell, sometimes Evan Mobley off the bounce. He was just too big, too strong, and shot the hell out of it against opposing guards. And so for him to go from that to this year, where he's just kind of really been a non-factor offensively for most of the season, has been, I don't want to say too alarming, because you still kind of believe in it. It's sort of like Al Horford. When he goes quiet for a while, you're just like, Al Horford will be fine. Doesn't matter that he's 38, like, he'll be fine. And Al Horford the last few weeks has been spectacular. But Jrue, ever since he came back from the finger, actually, like, it just feels like he's been more confident, a little more sure of himself. The game against Miami, and that's when you need him to like really be a factor, is when they're guarding him with someone like Tyler Hero. And then the answer for your offense, the best answer, one of the best answers, is to involve Jrue in the actions, let him be a real factor. A lot of the times when he has guys on him like that, teams have used centers on him. They've used people just trying to hide guys on Jrue Holiday, and the Celtics haven't really punished that a lot this season.
He
Jrue
hasn't been a killer
punished that a
whale.
lot.
To have a killer whale offense, you have to have 5 killer whales. Like, you have to have each guy be able to punish the weak link, or else you can have someone hide. And he is like, I think I saw a stat that they're 50-3 when he scores more than 14 points. Like, he has to be able to attack those mismatches. And we just, for some reason, just haven't seen it very much this season.
Yeah, and he's huge. He's huge for them. And if he gets back to that level, if he can lift it up here for the playoffs, start knocking down shots, his 3-point percentage since he came back from the finger is actually fantastic. He's well into the 40s, I believe. And so he's starting to play well. He's starting to turn it up. He had a lot of time off, so maybe that helped. Like the finger issue, it might have been a blessing to just take some more time off, get right, and have a lot of juice as they get to the end of the regular season and into the playoffs, because they can't reach the level they did last year unless Jrue is right. He was so good in the playoffs. Like, he was so good at the playoffs. And if he gets back to that, fantastic. If he doesn't, that's not quite as cool, but he's starting to trend up. He's starting to tick up. 3 straight games with at least 10 field goal attempts. He's averaging about 13 field goal attempts in his last 3 games, which is very much like against what he's done most of this season, when he's just been as quiet as it gets.
Yeah, I wonder, Jay, from that standpoint of like, should a priority be just in the last month here, like, not giving Jrue a confidence boost, but like enabling him within the offense more, because he does sacrifice so much, and they don't need him to go to him much. But like, when you see that Miami game, when you see obviously he had 12 assists against Brooklyn, and I guess this will be made easy anyway with some guys having nights off. But should they just try to get him knowing or to that level, or is it just situations like, well, they'll just do that in the playoffs? They need it. He's Jrue Holiday. He doesn't really need practice at this stage of his career.
I think you play through him some. Yeah, I think you get him going because to me, you need that solution in the playoffs. Like when teams hide guys on him, sometimes the easiest thing is to just run an action with Jrue Holiday in it and put that guy in the action and don't allow other teams to hide a guy on Jrue. Like, remember last year, teams threw Jokic on him. This year, it's like teams have thrown big men on him. JJ Redick, he didn't play against the Lakers, and JJ was like, yeah, you know, if he had played, we could have just had our big men sag off of him. And it's like, oh, okay. All right. Like that's what they're talking about with Jrue Holiday now. Like he's that guy now. And I guess he did play in the Lakers, but Jackson Hayes didn't play. And they were talking about how Jackson Hayes would have sagged off Jrue Holiday in that game if Jackson Hayes had played. And so that's who Jrue Holiday has become. And the Celtics have kind of allowed that to happen. Jrue Holiday has allowed that to happen. So activate him. Activate him, punish those coverages. If that means shooting a lot, shoot a lot. If that means using him as a screener, as a ball handler, just do it. He's really good. I think you'll find the results won't be that bad at all.
Except for the times when he takes the craziest transition three you've seen or a step back on an offensive rebound when there's still 10 seconds left on the shot clock. But if that doesn't happen and the winning ways continues, I suggest you maybe make some money using that Jrue Holiday knowledge and go over to our friends at PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. You can run your game all season long on PrizePicks. It's very easy. If you just feel like you've been watching the Celtics for the entire year, you know maybe that Peyton Pritchard's in the zone and he's going to set the record for all-time bench made threes. You go more on Peyton Pritchard made 3-pointers. You do that with Jason Tatum, more than 10 rebounds. And you're going to get yourself a winner. You sign up today. You can get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to get that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. And so real easy to sign up, download the app, use promo code CLNS, get $50 instantly after you play your first lineup. Again, download PrizePicks, use code CLNS, $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. Now, B-Rob, you mentioned...
I got to cut you off for a second. Go back to Jrue Holiday.
All right.
From January 10th to March 10th, he had 3 games with double-digit shots. 3 total in 2 months, and he's done it in 3 straight games. Like, what he's done the last 3 games is not normal for him this season, and I think it's a great sign for the Celtics that they're getting him more involved. He's becoming more involved. He's been more aggressive. That includes also a 12-assist game against Brooklyn. So, trending up. He's trending up.
Also, sneaky, very active on the offensive glass in these 5 games since he's been back. I think he's had 13 offensive rebounds in the last 5 games, which is a big number for anyone, much less.
He's the guy in the corner, and they love crashing from the corner. It feels like he does such a good job of like, all right, I'm going to be in the dunker spot or I'm going to be the guy in the corner, and he just roams that baseline and he's finding a way to make an impact. So I think that's a great sign. And you mentioned B-Rob. I think it's wise, and Jay mentioned the stats of just getting him more shots, playing the offense through him. Just let him do more as this season winds down. I think that was my next question. Is Jay's already mentioned that he wants to see kind of more from the starting lineup, just like get together and get some positive, maybe no longer have a net rating. You've also mentioned B-Rob getting just playing through Jrue Holiday more, but I think they only have 3 games left against teams above 500. They will be playing the Grizzlies, The Knicks
like next Monday.
and the Magic are the only games that they have against above 500 teams. Like
Wow.
we were having a debate like whether or not they would get to 40 wins before they're going to get to 20 losses. They win their next game, which is against Brooklyn. They're going to get to 50 wins before 19 losses. My question for you, B-Rob, how important is it for them to get to 60 wins in general? I think they can't get to 60 before lose the next one. They probably will lose one of their next 11 games. But what's important here over this last month? Is it health? Are they just going to do this rotation of like every star gets a next night off and they will somehow find a way to win games? You mentioned Jrue Holiday, which just getting the starters kind of back integrated. But what do you want to see from this Celtics team basically over the final month of this season?
Yeah, I do think Jay's point of I do want to see the starters get kind of figure things out with Porzingis back on the floor. If you go through the schedule here, I want to see those guys. They might be only playing 3 teams above 500. I want to see that group just play against teams that are trying in general right now. So like Sacramento's on that list. Phoenix is
the Blazers play hard.
The Blazers play hard. Like they're may or may not be taking depending on the
not
night.
Charlotte is what you're saying.
Yeah, Charlotte, exactly. we don't want to save that for the last 2 games of the year. Phoenix.
The final 2 games against Charlotte are going to be a joke. Like that's an absolutely ridiculous thing to have on the schedule.
Peyton Pritchard will put his stamp on 6th Man of the Year award with 2 back-to-back triple doubles in those last 200 games. But yeah, like those, there's enough games on here where
he might put up Jokic numbers in those games.
Right?
He's going to get 60 in one of those games.
It's gonna be special. But yeah, like that. You want to see the starting 5 out there together for real minutes for me for like half those games. Reasonably, there's a few back-to-back games in there. But as far as priorities go, like get Jalen right, health-wise, enable Jrue, get Porzingis back together. And then, I don't know, it's like even I'm curious now of like how much eventually we're going to have to make a decision about the double big here if you're Joe going into the playoffs. And so even against those teams that are trying, like see more of that, like figure out who you're going to trust in those situations. I assume Nemi's not going to be a part of that equation in the playoffs unless someone gets hurt.
I swear if Nemi says 1 more minute in the playoffs and the Celtics
but what if Porzingis gets hurt though? Like if Porzingis gets hurt, then
go small.
You still think you go small over double big?
Al and Luke.
Just straight. So that would suck though in my mind. I agree, but I think that sucks because that takes away your strength. Like double big defensively is your strength this year.
I don't think Nemi is a strength.
Okay,
here's what you do.
Is that a strength in the regular season or is that a strength in the playoffs?
That's fair. That's what you need to find out. And you're probably right. It is probably just the regular
And
season.
is it a strength in the regular season with Nemi involved or strength in the playoffs with Nemi involved? Because I think it's possible that a playoff strength is like Porzingis and Al or Al and Cornette or Porzingis and Cornette.
Right, and then that's it.
If you get Nemi in the mix in a high-level playoff series,
do you
remember what happened the first Cleveland game?
that was bad. I'm not talking about the Cleveland series. I'm talking about first round against Orlando, or second round against.
They could throw out J.D. Davison and Baylor Shireman, and they'd probably be all right.
All right. So contingency plans. Nemi's not a good contingency plan. What's your contingency plan in the playoffs? Is it Torrey Craig for 10 minutes? Is it?
I think you just load up more minutes for the other
or is
guys.
it 7? Yeah, or is it? I guess
if you have a lot of guys who can handle a lot of minutes, and now you have Peyton Pritchard, who's at a totally different level than he was last season, and I think it's possible that Pritchard's value still dries up late in the playoffs or in certain matchups, but he's another guy you can play a lot of minutes and feel comfortable about, on top of all the perimeter guys in your starting lineup who will play a ton of minutes in a playoff setting. Sam Hauser, how many minutes per game did he play in the playoffs last year? It wasn't a lot. Like, I don't think you need a contingency plan. Your contingency plan is just playing the guys you trust more. That's it.
You start Al Horford and then you bring in Luke Cornette off the bench. And then if you want to go double big.
Yeah, Hauser played 15 minutes per game in the playoffs last year.
You play both of them and
That's
you
crazy.
Just survive the other minutes. Like Jason Tatum is your second big in the double big situation here. Like there's just no scenario in which I'm trusting Nemi to set a screen, even like to set a screen without getting called for an offensive foul. Nemi is a protector of both rims. Shout out to chat member Brendan Kelly for saying that. I just don't want it. And if Kristaps does get hurt, like obviously your chances are hurt, for lack of a better phrase, but like in no situation is Nemi the solution.
I don't think Nemi is the solution at all. All I'm thinking about here, I don't want to waste Al Horford for 35 minutes in the first 2 rounds. And I guess, yeah, if you want to give all those minutes to Hauser and Pritchard and that works, yes, obviously that is the answer. But if it's like literally just filler minutes in a series, like you said, you could throw anyone out there. Like Nemi versus like any options 10 through 15 on the bench right now. That's what I'm talking about here. Like, is that a viable option for that? Like, but there
will never be a need to go to 10 through 15 on the bench in a playoff series, unless
2 guys get hurt.
Drastically screwed by health.
How many minutes?
I think even with 2 guys hurt, they wouldn't have to go that deep. Like if it's bigs, yes. But you basically can play 6 guys in a playoff series because Derek White, Jrue Holiday, Jason Tatum, and Jaylen Brown can play a ton of minutes. And you're not going to need much else.
I will only accept Nemi if both Luke Cornett and Kristaps Porzingis are hurt in this scenario. Like, if you win in 4 games, Al Horford's minutes don't really matter.
I guess that's true.
And that was one of
you win a quick series, and that takes care of the problem.
And you know what helps you win a quick series? Not having 6 disastrous minutes in the first game 3 in Orlando. Here's
another thing. Then.
After Packers had his annual podcast about how there are no more adjustments left.
That's the best post game 1 podcast. Everyone's searching for that.
I just don't know what else they could do.
Last year I was right. Last year there was nothing any of those teams could do.
Last year you were right. At long last, your stance came through.
How many games is Tam going to play to end the year? How many actually? He had a good quote to you, Jay. You guys down there in terms of button heads. In terms of, I imagine they wanted him to sit one of those back to backs. He clearly didn't go for it. Joe's playing.
I think it's crazy
anyway.
that he played both legs of that back to back, especially because the second game was a 6 p.m. tip after flying from Miami to New York. That was a tough, physically demanding back-to-back. There was no need to play him against Brooklyn. They could have beat Brooklyn anyway. And they got to stop letting him win those headbutting battles.
He's the star player, though. You treat the star players differently.
Doesn't matter. Headbutt harder. Especially Joe Mazzulla. That man supposed to be a jiu-jitsu.
Yeah, but monster. He also loves winning. He
should love winning his argument against Jason Tatum and forcing Jason Tatum to sit on the bench. That's what he should win, because Tatum's minutes are unnecessary. They're going to need him fresh. If you look at the last month or so, they've had some destructive fourth quarters, including in some very big games. I can't rule out fatigue as a factor there.
Yeah, but they also have been awful when Jason Tatum's not awful, but their numbers with Jason Tatum off the court are also bad. So,
but you can live with that because you're not getting the 1 seed, you're not slipping from 2, and you should believe that you can win anywhere on the road in a playoff series. So, I know Tatum wants to play all the time, especially on the road, and that really complicates things because he's a star, and it's tough to piss off your star. But sometimes they should light his jersey on fire and not even give him an option to suit up.
I'm looking at the stretch last year. He sat out the last 2 games of the regular season. He sat out a random game against the Trailblazers. But he pretty much played his normal allotment of minutes down the stretch. And so I just don't expect, even though all your arguments ring true, Jay, I just don't like Jason Tatum likes to play basketball. And if they can't convince him to sit out against this random night against Brooklyn, for some reason, didn't he have a quote like it's like road games, like these people paid to possibly see Jason Tatum, so he wants to do it, and he's more likely to sit out a home back-to-back. And unfortunately, I think they're 2 remaining back-to-backs are in Portland and Sacramento, and then in New York and Orlando. And so the fine people of the Pacific Northwest paid good money to see Jason Tatum. He's going to, because he's a gentleman and a scholar, and he wants the people of Portland who paid to see him to see him play. He should not care about that game in Madison Square Garden, because he already has put on a show for all the New Yorkers out there and dominated the Knicks right after the All-Star break.
His two heaviest months have been February and March. 36.9 in February, 38.3 so far in March per game.
That's wild.
Just tone it down.
What were they last season, though?
Just tone it down.
They won a championship.
Have you guys
talked about last year? So hold on. That's a good point. Last year they won a championship. Last year
they were up by like 12 games in the final.
Last year they had a ton of blowouts that limited his minutes. Last year every series was short, so they were able to get rest in the playoffs, which is very rare, and you can't count on that happening again. Could it happen? Sure, but you can't count on that happening again. So you should do a better job of pacing yourself. You should keep in mind what happened to the Denver Nuggets last season when they played all their guys key minutes because they didn't trust their bench, and then absolutely ran out of gas in the playoffs. We're up 20 at home against the Minnesota Timberwolves and blew that lead against Rudy Gobert and company. Like, they made Anthony Edwards look like Michael Jordan. That was the comparison at that time. Anthony Edwards to Michael Jordan, because the Denver Nuggets played their guys too many minutes. And I'm not saying that's going to happen to the Celtics. I'm just saying that stuff like that can happen. And that is a possible impact of playing your key guys too many minutes. And Jason Tatum keeps himself in great shape. He prepares himself incredibly well to handle the rigors. There are very few players who can handle as much as he does on a night-to-night basis. But don't push it, man. There's no need to push it. No need at all.
I just seemed pretty tired in the 2022 finals, and that was a playoffs where they wasted a lot of games with tomfoolery.
That was a crazy playoff run from a fatigue standpoint. I was near death personally, and I was just writing about the games.
Yeah. Did you guys talk about Porzingis playing 32 minutes last night too?
That was a wild move.
I couldn't believe that.
So yeah, test his bronchital lungs,
right?
You know?
Like, hey, welcome back.
That was a weird one because Joe strongly suggested that Kristaps will be on a minutes restriction before the game. Then after the game, Joe said the plan all along was to play Kristaps 12 minutes in the fourth quarter.
To play the entire fourth?
And that his minutes restriction was about 32, which, all right. That's like what he normally plays. Yeah. And then Kristaps like, yeah, I thought I was going to play 20 minutes. And then Joe called out to me in the fourth quarter and was like, yo, you ain't coming out. So buckle up and get ready.
I love Kristaps' honesty in those moments. We're just throwing Joe under the bus. Was
Joe lying a little bit? Maybe.
Joe would never be dishonest with the
front office is going to give Joe a minutes limit on minutes limits. That'll be
I think, but Kristaps looked great in the fourth quarter, so I understand kind of riding him a little bit. And from a standpoint of getting him back, getting him in top playing shape again, it might even be helpful to play him as many minutes as he did. So I don't hate that. It's not like he's nursing an injury that could re-aggravate it or anything like that.
I've got what I don't mean to go back to Nemi here, but I have to, because I just found a number that suits my case. Horford, Nemi plus 13.6 net rating this year in 174 minutes. That's like the fifth best on the team with like 150 minutes or more. I'm not saying Nemi's good. I'm just saying that.
Can I repeat my question? Is that a regular season stat? That's going to translate to the playoffs.
I'm going to press the button.
Stats from B-Rob.
I'm just surprised by it.
Such a nonsense stat deserves such a nonsense musical play in.
Double bigs. It's not about Nemi. This is all about double bigs.
I know the numbers are what they say they are, but at some point you need to be a eye test person, and I don't want Namias Keita anywhere near the playoffs. Double bigs. I do
Double
think
bigs of injuries. Double bigs of injuries. That's all I'm talking about. I'm not.
I
talking
know,
about
but if
playing
there's
them.
injuries, there's injuries, and there's this like they're screwed. I mean, if Jason Tatum gets hurt, if Jason Tatum rolls his ankle in Game 7 against the Miami Heat, after the comeback's not going to happen. Like at some point, you just deal with injuries.
Who was the coach who was asked what would happen to his? I think it was a football coach who was asked what would happen to his quarterback. It might have been Peyton Manning's coach, and he was like, "What happens if Peyton Manning's out?" He's like, "Then we're fucked." And I don't prepare for being fucked.
Just brutal slander for Nemi. This is just poor guy. Yeah, that's my stat for tonight. That's all I got. It's been swatted down, so I'll take my medicine here.
I take your large. Like, would I prefer them to go in healthy with double bigs? Absolutely. Like, it's a nice little thing they can use. I just think if they have Kristaps Porzingis healthy, bringing in a bench unit of Pritchard, Cornette, Hauser, and Al Horford to just like cycle in around Jason Tatum there, and that's your 9-man rotation. I think that's the best form of the Celtics. I think that's in terms of versatility, in terms of matchups. Like if another team goes double bigs, or you just want to punish a team on the glass, the double bigs is obviously what you're going to be working with. But I don't think you put in bad players just to go double big.
The correct quote is, it was someone asked the coach why Peyton Manning's backups didn't get more reps, and he said, "Fellas, if 18 goes down, we're fucked, and we don't practice fucked."
What coach was that? Chuck Pagano?
Tom Moore.
Oh, he's a guy, certainly, who said things.
Offensive coordinator.
Yeah, he must have been the offensive coordinator.
I might have one more stat here, not Nemi related, to throw to you guys. Celtics defensive rating in the last like 15, 20 games
hasn't been good.
It hasn't been great. What do we make of it? Like,
part of it has to be Kristaps' absence. Like the teams that feel like they've been able to get to the rim better, no matter how many bigs are on the court. And then part of it is, I think that's mostly
malaise, like regular season, like
malaise.
They're winning games
not
anyway.
being locked in, like random games against teams that don't really get the juices going. I don't know.
A
Jay,
lot
what
of
do you
it
think?
seems like
fourth quarters.
Like they've been up big in a lot of these games. The Cleveland one twice, and then they get up 20 and are like, all right, now we're gonna give up a lot of points.
On that note, they are 30th in defensive rating in the NBA in the last 15 games.
The Celtics are?
The Celtics are 126 points per 100 possessions.
Sheesh.
Minus
in
19 net
quarters,
rating.
you said?
In fourth quarters, just fourth quarters.
Yeah.
And they're 12-3 in these games. So to Jay's point, these late collapses haven't mattered for the most part. But the train has come off the tracks in the fourth quarter defensively regularly in the last month.
Yeah, maybe sit guys a little bit. I do think guys are banged up too, and that's probably part of that stat.
That's
like
wild.
Jalen is definitely playing through some injuries. Tatum has played a lot of minutes.
Here's what I'll say. If
Jrue,
Nemi can come in the fourth quarters down this final stretch and shore up that defensive rating, that's I guess the stay ready crew needs to come in and maybe play with a bit more hunger.
The Heat game, when he played the entire fourth quarter, they allowed 14 points.
That was good, Nemi. That
was good, Nemi.
And so I think that that fourth quarter stat is obviously like, oh, that's ugly. But I also don't know if we're going to see that like over the final month of the season. Are we going to see the starting lineup of the Celtics really put in a 48-minute like dominant performance? Because they're just not playing anyone good. I think all you can ask for this
in those games they're 12-3,
right?
And almost all those wins are by double digits.
Yeah. So all you can ask for at this point is
quarters aren't really the most strenuous like things that you should really care about for the most part. The Oklahoma City one wasn't great.
The Cavs.
The Cavs one wasn't great.
But they don't have tests. There's no test for the remainder of the year. Maybe that Knicks game, if like Jalen Brunson comes back and like they're on a roll, but there is not a game the Celtics are going to get up for.
The Memphis game at the end of a 6-game trip I think will be a good, like
for
Marcus
the
best
Smart's
test
honor.
there. Yeah, right. But who knows how, like Memphis is like half their guys are always out anyway, it seems like. So that might be not much of anything, but yeah, there won't be many opportunities to test. This is just like, that's just a random thing that fourth quarter wise, you wonder if probably has nothing to do with what's going on, but just something to keep an eye on these last 15 games here to see how it shakes out.
Agreed. Gotta shore it up. Other
than that, want to see a lot of the young guys here in the next month. Give me a full month of Taylor Shireman minutes.
Yeah.
Jordan Walsh. Give one of those guys 20 minutes a night. Is Xavier Tillman ever going to play again?
Probably not.
I might take Nemi over the X-Man at this point as there's a double pick. And I've besmirched Nemi's name for this entire recording. Anything else, folks, before we wrap this up?
That's all I got.
Did you guys have nice St. Patrick's Days?
Isn't St. Patrick's Day technically tomorrow?
Yeah, but today was a parade, bro.
I live in Philadelphia, where they also had a parade.
See?
Did you see all the confiscated Borgs on the a Borg is a blackout rage gallon, all the just gallons of weird green liquid that were confiscated by the MBTA?
No.
A Borg? What is a Borg?
A Borg is you take a gallon of water and you pour out half of it, and then you pour in alcohol and whatever food coloring you like, and it's called the blackout rage gallon. And the
so it's basically Four Loko?
It's
like
basically
the real
homemade,
Four Loko.
Homemade Four Loko.
Four Loko on the go.
Yeah, but if you saw, there's a bunch of pictures today, like one from the Broadway stop, one from the Park Street stop. It's just gallons and gallons of just green liquid that has been confiscated by the MBTA police. And I will say that's the difference between Boston as a city and Philadelphia as a city. The Philly PD are not confiscating Borgs. I've never seen outdoor drinking is basically legal in Philadelphia on days in which there's an event to be celebrated. But apparently not in puritanical Boston. And so,
well, they made the parade earlier this year because they want to stop people from drinking as much. I don't think it worked. I got home from the airport at like 9:30, and there was a long line out the bar right near where I live already. I don't think it worked, but they tried.
Who knows? We're recording right now at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. Maybe the streets of Southie right now are, no one's out. No one is drunk. It's just a nice, peaceful evening. People are walking their dogs, maybe kids with strollers. It's just nothing's going on in South Boston right now.
Nothing except this podcast, baby.
There you go.
Hey, shout out to Trinity College. Final Four bound.
Hey, that's pretty cool.
Final Four bound.
Where's the Final Four?
Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Oh,
yeah. They go to
next
Fort
weekend,
Wayne, Indiana
when's
to play a
they...
team that's from like 25 minutes away.
Oh no! All right,
Wesleyan. Fellow.
Oh, they're playing Wesleyan.
So
a little Connecticut showdown.
Yeah, they're 1-1 against each other this year. They beat Wesleyan in the NESCAC championship game at Wesleyan. It was awesome. Wesleyan is the number 1 overall seed, though. Still, that was their one loss of the whole season. It'll be a huge revenge game for them in the Final Four. It's going to be an epic game, I think. I need Trinity to win.
I love some good NESCAC basketball talk. I got my start talking hoops on the internet, doing games for Bowdoin College webcast, men's and women's basketball. So any NESCAC basketball chat we can engage in, I'm all for it. Everyone should be rooting for the Bantams. I mean, I'm a polar bear guy, but we got Jay King's brothers, the assistant coach, and we are all pulling for the Bantams as they roll into Fort Wayne.
Let's go.
I don't even know what Wesleyan is. A Cardinal? We're not Cardinal people. Wesleyan, there are a bunch of drug using hippies on that college. Trinity's a hard-nosed school in the middle of Hartford, and we got Bantam pride on this podcast. So go Bantams, go Trinity, take it home for the kid, the gods, and the legends. That's going to do it for us, folks. This is now a traditional Trinity basketball podcast as well. So we'll check back.
When is the game? When is the game, Jay? Wait,
Thursday.
What time? I'm sure you can watch it for free. I'm sure there'll be some guy from Trinity College probably doing the broadcast who will be the next Jam Packard. So this is also your chance to scout out new talent there. And so everyone watch the Bantams destroy those filthy Cardinal from Wesleyan. Middletown, Connecticut. What a sick joke of a place that is.
And if they win, there'll be analysis on Friday morning here on Still Poddable.
Oh yeah,
for that.
Oh yeah,
that's what we got for you guys, folks. If you want Bantam talk, you want Celtics talk, you want podcasts in your feed every single day, Monday through Friday, go to patreon.com/stillpoddable. We appreciate everyone who tuned into this podcast on the CLNS YouTube page. We'll be back tomorrow and the rest of this week with more Celtics talk, more Bantam talk. Maybe we should get your brother on the podcast to talk Bantam. Tune in, great. Folks. We'll find out.
Bantams, I'll tell you, they're great to watch. Fantastic squad.
Go Bantams!
They play their balls off.
That's that J King. That's the King family difference. And we'll so if you want to figure out what happens to Trinity, you want to figure out what happens to the Celtics, tune in Still Poddable. Thank you guys for listening.
You're struggling to stop this one.
I always do, but I had
going.
Yeah,
back
but then
to like your third round of Bantam talk.
You keep interrupting me though, so like I was moving towards an ending, and then it's just like you had to talk about the Bantam again.
Now I'm trying to see if you can wrap it up, or if I can just make you.
Still Poddable, the Boston Celtics, Still Poddable.